Hi there, hello. So this is a Facebook Live for you for this Friday afternoon, and today I'm going to cover how to speed up your project and know the risks of doing that. So I'm Jane, I'm a chartered architect and the founding director of iArchitect. I specialise in helping homeowners of period property with potential to turn those into beautiful, characterful homes that will help protect the planet. So first of all, you want to make a start. So I get lots of people coming to me after 5, 10, even 20 years after they've moved into their home and they've wanted to do something about it all of that time, but they've struggled to come to a decision about what to do. So that's the very first thing, is to make some decisions. And yes, you want to take time to consider your decisions carefully and make the right decisions, but don't let it paralyze you. There are only a few decisions to start with that you need to make. And once you've got a good architect working with you in your corner, they will help you, guide you through the decisions that you need to make at each stage. And at each stage, the decisions will get more detailed. So to start off with, there's 3 fundamental basics you need to know in terms of priorities. So you need to know what your budget is. That's really important. You need to let your architect know what your budget is. You don't need to let anybody else know what your budget is, but your architect will help make sure that you meet that budget, and they will design to that budget. So they will work to get you everything that you want within that budget. And an architect's fee historically was based around budget, but it's no longer the case most of the time. So speak to your architect about it. If you don't feel comfortable telling somebody what your budget is, don't. But a budget is key to making sure that you can get this project to happen. So budget is a key decision, timescale is a key decision, and the level of quality is a key decision. So those are 3 really important decisions that you need to make very early on, along with what it is that you need from your project. So where timescale is a priority, or you have got a specific deadline that you want to meet, then you can often find yourself wanting to speed things up really quickly so that you can meet your deadline. And so there are ways to do that, and different options come with different risks, and that's what we're going to be going through. But the first thing is, make a start, make the decisions, speak to people who can help you, get an architect involved if that's appropriate for your project, and make a start. If you would like some of my help to do this, you can download a free checklist from my website, and that will help you get those really key fundamental decisions in place, and you can get that done quickly, and then you're in a really good position to start moving forward with your project. Don't wait 10, 15, 20 years wishing that your home was something else, when you could do it today. You could make that start today. So, do you have a deadline for a project? Have you got a project in mind and you think, well, we'd really like this to happen perhaps before the baby comes along, or before we have a big wedding anniversary and we want to have friends around and have a celebration at home? If you've got any sort of deadlines for your project in mind, pop them down in the comments below. I'll be really interested to hear what you're planning to do and when you'd like to have that done by. So once you've decided the first step, made some decisions, the second step is to test those decisions. So the first step in architecture speak is your brief. The second step in architecture speak is the feasibility. So feasibility basically means checking that what you want to do is possible. So check that you can do it within your timescale, check that you can do it within your budget, check that your budget will allow you to get the quality that you want, or that it's even possible to do that with your building, or that the planning department would support the sort of build that you're looking for, the scale of it, and all of these things. So checking the practicalities and the possibilities. Do that very early on. And I personally, with my clients, I like to get some idea of how much it's going to cost to build the project before we go to planning permission, because I don't see any point in you getting planning permission for a project that you can't afford to build. So you might as well find out roughly how much it's going to cost. It doesn't have to be exact, but just some sort of an idea. And then you know that once you've got planning permission, it's something you can afford to do. So you can go forward with it, rather than having to wait and then perhaps planning permission lapsing and you not being able to do what you really would like to do in the end. So test the decisions against costs, against time, against all sorts of practicalities for your feasibility. So once those are your ground rules, get your brief in place, make your decisions, test it, do the feasibility work, and then you know going forward you're going to be okay. So the quicker you can do that, the better in some ways. But I would say that the best designs come from things that are really well considered. So, you know, I mean, there's a lot of movement now, slow cooking, slow fashion. You know, we are used to sort of instant access, instant responses to text messages, and people picking up their mobile phones, having their mobile phones with them all the time. So these sort of instant gratification is not necessarily the best thing to do when you're looking at building, because building, for most people, they want it to last a long time. It costs a lot of money and you want it to last. So if you want it to last, it's worth taking a little bit more time, especially at the earlier stages, to make sure that the decisions that you're making are the right ones for you, balanced against getting paralysed and overwhelmed by too much decisions. So you want to make a start and get it done, but not take too long about it, but not rush it. Okay, so there's a fine line, there's a balance to be had. So when it comes, so once you've got your brief and you've tested it out, you know it's what you want, and you know that it's going to be possible for you, then you want to get planning permission. Dealing with planning, I've talked about in a previous video what the difference is between planning and building control, what your different options are for building control. With planning, there are many different options depending on where you are. The fastest way to get through planning is to design within permitted development. So don't design something that you have to apply for planning permission for, because planning permission is a process that takes time. And although there are limits on the time that it can take legally, that doesn't mean that it won't take longer if certain situations occur. So if you design something that's permitted development, that means you don't have to apply for anything, you can just get on with it. If you have to get planning permission, then you have the process to go through to get to the design, which you should do anyway, whether you need planning permission or not. But then you also have to submit the planning application, and it will take at least 8 weeks to get a decision from the planning officer about whether you can go ahead with that project or not. That can also be extended to 13 weeks, especially if there's, for some reason, you're looking at negotiating different things with the planning officer. So one way of preempting negotiations is at the very early stage, looking at having pre-application inquiries, PD inquiries with the planning officer, and hopefully, preferably with the officer who is going to be looking at your case. If you can do that before you make your submission, then the chances are that it's going to be much more likely to get a decision within the 8 weeks, possibly even quicker. But planning departments are very under-resourced at the moment. They don't have the staff, they have a lot of projects. Local authorities, they just don't have the money to staff them more. So there's no slack, and at certain times of the year, they're very, very busy, and it can be very difficult to get a timely response. It can be very difficult to get to speak to a case officer as well. So the planning process if you have to get planning, it's going to take at least 8 weeks. If you don't get approval and you have to go through appeal and you have to, maybe submit a different design, then that will extend the amount of time it takes to get planning permission. So that is something that's very difficult to control, but there are things that you can do to improve that by speaking early with your neighbours to try and reduce the chance of objections, and speaking early with your planning officer so that they are much more aware of your project and understand the reasons behind it and more supportive. If you've had some input from them about what they're likely to support, and you take their comments on board and include that in the design, then the chances are they're more likely to approve it. So those are some things you can do to not necessarily speed it up, but prevent it from going over the minimum limit. Then the next stage is dealing with building control. Now I've talked about building control options in a previous video, but what you can do is to speed up your project. You can take a big risk, and during the 8 to 13 weeks that your design is waiting for planning approval, you can get on, and if you're working to full plans building regs, you can carry on to the next stage of developing the design on paper during those 8 to 13 weeks. And that means that as soon as you've got planning permission, then you can get your contractors to price based on your building control approval and make a start on site. So that can cut out the whole chunk of time that you're waiting for building control to develop the design to that stage and to get approval. However, there is a big risk with doing that, is if you don't get planning permission, that's all those fees and all that time of the cost of those fees wasted. Because if you've got no planning permission, you're going to have to go back to square one, change the design, make some alterations to the design, and that, chances are, is going to then make changes to the building control stage as well. So might not necessarily completely change it. It might be some small minor amendments, and then it may be much quicker to do it, but you're still going to then have to go back to planning. If you don't get approval, you're going to have to go back to planning, and then you're going to have to wait another 8 to 13 weeks. So there is a big risk with doing that, but if you are confident that your design is going to get planning approval, then you can assess whether that risk is something you're prepared to take, because by doing that, you're going to be 8 to 13 weeks, 2 to 3 months sooner on site. Maybe there's a benefit to you for doing that. So if you've got a project and you've got a deadline that you're hoping to achieve, let me know. The next stage where you can look to speed up your project is with the builders and tender, getting costs from builders. So I like to get some very early costs from a builder to give me some idea. They are then aware of the project. It gives them an advantage in some ways because they've got some awareness. They're able to pencil it in their timescale. They've got an idea of when you're likely to make a start on site, so they can start to look at that as an idea and plan some of their year with that in mind. So you can get your builder to price on your planning stage drawings. That will get you an earlier set of prices. However, there are risks involved in that because planning drawings are not really adequately detailed enough to get decent prices. So you may find that your prices come in either way too high because the builder is taking account of potential risks that they don't know about, so they're having to make assumptions, or they might come in way too low because the assumptions that they're making are too optimistic and they haven't taken certain things into account that you particularly want. So yes, you can speed up your project by getting your builders to price early and price on your planning and even to skip out full plans, building control, and go into a notification altogether. You can do that, it's an option, but there are definitely risks involved in doing that. So you need to do that with the knowledge that there are risks and to take care with that. It's much better to get prices based on building control drawings. They will give you a much better set of costs because there are fewer assumptions. If you want fewer assumptions still, you can get even more detailed drawings and schedules of works, or for a very big project, bills of quantities. These are documents which set out exactly all the different materials. You can get right down to NBS specifications. I can't remember off the top of my head what NBS stands for. It's a standard specifying. There's a tool, there's an online tool. It's what you would tend to do for a very big project. I wouldn't necessarily do that for a small project because it doesn't usually warrant it. It's not worth it really usually. But the more you can specify out and be clearer about and have fixed and get costs based on that, the more likely those costs are going to actually reflect the project, and you're going to have much more accurate costs. You're going to have less costs that are extremely high because they're based on assumptions that there's a huge risk involved, and you're going to have less randomly low prices where the builder maybe then would be seeking changes or seeking extra costs during the work on site. So that's where you can sort of speed up by getting earlier prices, but you're better off waiting and getting more detailed information at building control stage, or even more detailed again. The final way that you can speed up your project and control the risks of it are to, I wouldn't say actually this is not really speeding it up, this is really just sort of managing the time scale. So once you've gone through all the steps, you've decided what you want, you've checked that it's possible, you've got planning permission, and you've dealt with building control, and you've got a set of prices from a selection of builders, and you've made your choice about which builder you're going for, then that builder, you want to make sure you've got a contract in place. So your contract, you can set a deadline in your contract for when the work must be completed by, and a realistic cost for what the builder will be, how much the builder will be penalised for if they don't meet that deadline. And you can't say, just pluck a figure out of the thin air about what this, it's not a penalty cost really. It's actually got to be reflective of how much that is going to cost you if the work overruns. So for example, with domestic work, you're often looking at potentially increased insurance premium, you're looking at the increased rental on another place, you're looking at things like council tax and bills that you're going to be replicating in two places if you're living out. It will include costs for, if you're paying for somebody like myself, where you've got a contract administrator on board who is helping you with your project during the construction, then there's additional fees for that extra time that it goes over. Those sorts of things. So it's the extra cost that it is going to cost you if they don't complete at the time that you've agreed, that they've agreed to. Because when you sign the contract, you're both agreeing. So the builder is agreeing that they can do it for them, and you're agreeing that that's when you're happy for it to be finished by. Then once it's on site, you're not going to be pushing for it to be done quicker than that. But at the same time, you're not expecting it to be later than that. Builder will also want to finish. But during the process, if something does occur on site, maybe you want a design change, or maybe something is uncovered that's unexpected that leads to more work than was planned, then you must allow the builder to have some extra time to complete, because it's, certain things are not within their control, and certainly if you've made a change, you have to agree and allow an extension to that deadline. So those are, at each stage, different things that you can do. I hope that has been clear and helpful. I know that a construction project is quite complicated. There are a lot of stages involved. There's a lot to do, and there are lots of decisions to be made, and you have a lot of options, and choosing the right option for you is not necessarily that easy. So that is where, you know, somebody like myself can advise and help you with making those decisions about what is going to suit you and your project better, based on, you know, the information that you give. If you would like to have some help deciding on, you know, how you want to approach your project, and you think that I might be able to help you make some of those decisions, then I am more than happy to have a chat. I do virtual chats, video chats, and we can talk through what it is you're looking to achieve, and then potentially how I could help you if that is what is going to be appropriate for your project. And if I'm not the right person for your project, I will then let you know alternative ways that you can get your project delivered. So you can go onto my website and you can book a call with me to have a chat if you think that might be helpful. Okay, so I will see you all again next Friday, and have a great weekend. See you then. Bye.